That's a hard question. Obviously, we just lost to the Saints. Let's just give them credit for this game. They played extremely well, and I know we got a lot of work to do. Certainly, I think when I came to Detroit, there was a lot of work to do, and that's what we're trying to do.
To come in and say that you had a lot of work to do is completely false. It's a bunch of trash because that wasn't the case in Detroit. We were a good football team. Matthew Stafford was playing as good as he has in his career. That was because of Coach Caldwell. And we were an organization that was ascending. It was built for growth, not regression. And they have regressed massively.
I'd probably say we got a lot of work to do. I probably say that every day, right? I'm pretty sure that's kind of my general outlook on work. There's always a lot to do and there's always a lot to be done. Right now it's all about this team. It's about us. It's about going forward. It's about what do we do this week? What do we do next week?
A quarter of the Detroit Lions 2020 NFL season is in the books, and the team still can't stop anyone from marching up and down the field and scoring points at will. With Matt Patricia still searching for answers, the question remains, is it too late for him to turn this thing around and get the Lions on the right track? And what about the role ownership plays in this early season debacle? I went searching for answers with Jake Riepma, an update anchor and producer for 97.1 The Ticket, who joined me this week to take the pulse of the franchise and whether or not Patricia deserves another opportunity to try and get this right. I'm Kevin McShane. Let's have this conversation. When you examine the Lions' season in totality, there's only really one place to start, and that is with the dismal start the defense has gotten off to this year. Thus, that's exactly where I began my discussion with Jake, debating how to fix the unit that has been crumbling down all season long. I'll re-welcome you to the show, Jake, and we're excited to talk to you about the state of the Lions. Great to see you this afternoon, and thanks so much for being here.
Oh, my pleasure, Kevin. It's an honor to be on the show, but I don't know how excited we can get talking Lions. I mean, especially with what we've had to witness over the course of the first 4 weeks.
We have to wallow in misery together. So here we
That's
go.
right. Misery loves company.
So, Jake, I think the Saints are still scoring even after the game a couple of days ago. So, my first question to you is, how do we fix the Lions' defense, buddy?
Well, Kevin, if I had those answers, I would be in radio. I'd be on the sidelines coaching. But my goodness, I think it's another one of those weeks that just leaves you scratching your head. I mean, I don't want to dive into the numbers, but you have to with all of the blown leads in the over the course of the Matt Patricia's first 3 seasons. It's the Lions go up 14-0 and me and you and everybody watching knows that lead's not safe, and certainly the Saints are coming back. Nobody knew that it was going to be to the tune of whatever 28 unanswered points or whatever it was, and it was going to be that easy. But you've seen this movie before. It's a bad movie, and unfortunately nothing is changing. The Lions defense continues to get gashed at all levels, and whether it be the lack of pass rush where the quarterback can stand back there and have have all day to throw, or the inability to cover up. No, I mean, nobody can cover the receivers for as long as, it was Drew Brees last Sunday. It was Aaron Rodgers earlier this year. Even think back to week 1. I know that's a while ago, but in the fourth quarter, it was Mitch Trubisky, who doesn't even have a job anymore, carving up this Lions defense. And they've been carved up 3 out of the 4 weeks so far. And that's supposed to be Matt Patricia and this regime's calling card. That's supposed to be their identity. And clearly it is, it's their identity, but for the absolute wrong reasons, which is very difficult to swallow. It's difficult to witness week in and week out. And, on early October in 2020, it's a very, very bleak times for Lions fans.
Now, we saw yesterday that Houston pulled the plug on Bill O'Brien after an 0-4 start, and he actually has made the playoffs. I think it was 4 out of the 7 years that he was the coach down there in Houston, and the Lions still insist on keeping Matt Patricia. So what gives, in your opinion, Bonnie? What does this guy have to do to be put out of his misery?
Yeah, Kevin, another great question, and another one that's going to leave you and me and anybody else tuning in scratching their head, because, especially when you can think of where this franchise was before Matt Patricia stepped in. Bob Quinn had a couple of years with Jim Caldwell, and people far more invested in it than me have come out and said, look, this wasn't a team that was just absolutely rock bottom when Patricia took over. This was a team that was 9-7. Jim Caldwell was fired after a 9-7 season. Think about that, to where this franchise is now. Matt Patricia came in, drove this franchise into the ground, and he hasn't done himself any favors. He's had soundbite after soundbite that just shows a lack of awareness, a lack of the ability to read the room. Whether it was earlier this year when he was saying, I had the best defensive play in Super Bowl history as a coach, so I think I know a thing or two about coaching in the fourth quarter, or when it was earlier this week when he said, I had there was a lot of work to be done when I inherited this team. And it just seems like he does a lot of finger pointing. There's a lack of accountability, which it rubs fans wrong. It rubs the media wrong. And I can't say what it does to the players, but and internally in that organization, but I can't necessarily think it bodes well. It doesn't come across that way. But again, Matt Patricia and Bob Quinn, he's not blameless in any of this either. I mean, he came out. Well,
he's the one who's hired Matt Patricia. Right?
Exactly. And he made going back to sound bites, there's the infamous one of Bob Quinn saying 9-7 is not good enough, and that puts a tangible record on the expectations at 9-7, and firing Jim Caldwell after that record, and that being not good enough. So I can't imagine what Patricia's era, if Caldwell's not good enough, then how in the world can Matt Patricia be good enough? And we're seeing that right now. And I gotta believe it's a matter of time. And I don't know if it will happen in the middle of the season, but
I certainly hope so.
Yeah, right. Unless there's some kind of dramatic turnaround, and I don't want to be completely negative in all of this, but now look at the Lions' schedule. They've got teams like Jacksonville and Houston coming up. Maybe they will win a couple of games, and I, for one, and I think a lot of people share the same opinion. Dan Orlovsky, who's a ESPN voice on Get Up and NFL Live, has spoken out against Patricia, even to the extent of calling it a pile of trash, and has been absolutely against the Patricia regime, and he's called for their job. So I don't know if it will happen in the season, but the worst thing I think for the Lions and their organization is if they rattle off a couple of wins and Sheila Ford and the rest of the organization decides to keep Quinn and Patricia around. I mean, that just sounds like a nightmare. So I'm praying that doesn't happen.
Do you think Patricia's been lionized?
I mean, that's a term that Detroiters know all too well, and I mean, it's difficult to say if he's been lionized. It just, I think a lot of times we and you see it across the NFL, but phenomenal coordinators don't always make the best head coaches. It's a little bit different of a job, and all of a sudden you go from being a specialist and specializing in being the defensive coordinators to the CEO of the program. You're running the program, and whether it be the examples with Darius Slay, where he made comments that upset the superstar player, there's a different identity as the head coach. And for Matt Patricia in his first 3 years, he just hasn't executed that role well as the CEO. And you can point to the sound bites, you can point to his tumultuous relationship with the media, when he asked a reporter to sit up straight when he's talking to him. And again, with the beef he had with Slay and driving out Quandre Diggs, and all kinds of former players speaking out against Matt Patricia. And it just seems like he's come in. He said it's going to be my way or the highway. He's tried to gut everything within the organization that was associated with the Caldwell era, tried to make it 100% his own, signed all the former Patriots, and the proof is in the pudding. It just hasn't worked in Detroit for 3 years with Matt Patricia.
Yeah, I call it the Patriots of the North. It hasn't worked out, buddy. So I'm hoping that someone within the organization wakes up and actually puts this organization on the right track. Because when you look, culpability of composition of this roster falls squarely at the feet of General Manager Bob Quinn, especially considering the fact he was given total autonomy to build the roster any way he saw fit. However, 4 games in to his 5th season, the team doesn't seem to be getting any tangibly better than when he first arrived. So I asked Riepma to assess the amount of accountability we should place on Quinn and whether or not he deserves another shot to prove he can get this right.
Yeah, I think there's a sense of Quinn and Patricia kind of being a package deal, especially for how much Quinn was involved in bringing Patricia in and made it clear that he wanted his guy. And because of that, I think if Patricia's gone, I gotta believe Bob Quinn is gone as well. And it's a clean start from the beginning. That's what I would do. That's what I think makes sense. But again, this organization doesn't do what makes sense all the time. So that's neither here nor there. I digress. But if Quinn's able to stick around and make a head coaching hire, I think there's a lot of great candidates out there, and it's kind of like we've talked about with the Tigers manager search. Do you go with kind of try to find that hidden gem like they did with Patricia, or do you go with one that's a little bit more proven? I mean, I've heard people.
Well, I wouldn't call Patricia a gem, but go ahead.
Right. I mean, trying to find that hidden gem, swinging for the fences and swinging and missing. In all aspects, but a name like Tony Dungy, or a veteran, a guy that's gotten it done, I think would help this organization. And so it's just a matter of trying to get inside that front office's brain and think what they could possibly do to salvage this franchise that seems to be yet again descending into rock bottom.
Yeah, I'll combine the last 2 questions for you. The first one has to do with Matthew Stafford. I know that you guys on 97 want the ticket constantly get calls about him and whether he should be the face of the franchise and how much help does he really need. And how do you think he's sort of elevated this franchise into the national conversation? Because certainly he's been sort of the Ford's golden boy. I think they love Matthew Stafford and won't get rid of him until he retires. But how do you think his career ascension has gone here in Detroit? And then finally, what do you predict is the future of this franchise?
Yeah, the Stafford stuff for me is simple. I think he's an incredible quarterback, incredibly talented, obviously first overall pick. He's going to make as much money as anybody ever, just the way the contract's been structured, and because he had that huge deal for both of his new contracts, and I think he's a great person. Look at everything he's done for Detroit. He's a community guy, and the city has rallied behind him, and I think there's so much more good with Matthew Stafford than bad. But the fact of the matter, the harsh reality, call it whatever you want, it's been 11 years, and a first number one overall quarterback has not had a playoff win for a franchise that's had chances. And it doesn't all reflect on Matthew Stafford. It's not all his fault, but I think 11 years is enough of a sample size to say it's not going to work here. And I think Matthew Stafford deserves better. This organization has not given him the opportunity enough. Of course, he's had the resources. I don't like that argument that he never had the weapon because he had one of the greatest wide receivers of all time. I know he's never had a run game, but he's had enough to get it done. He's had some good defenses, and it just hasn't happened in 11 years. And we make silly analogies on the radio all the time. There can be two good people married in a relationship and it just not work out, and divorce is the best thing for it. I think divorce is the best thing for Matthew Stafford. Give him an opportunity to win elsewhere. There's plenty of organizations that are competing for playoff spots that he could go and help in an instance, and maybe a fresh start would be helpful for both him and his family. And the Lions could, again, because they've hit rock bottom, they can start over. I wanted them to do that by drafting Tua Tagovailoa out of Alabama, and they refused to do that because, like you said, Matthew Stafford is the golden child in Detroit, and maybe he has earned that. I mean, he's given, like you said, the national relevance with Matthew Stafford. He's given the national audience a reason to watch the Lions because he is that spectacular. He is that talented, but he just hasn't gotten over the hump. Maybe it's not all his fault and completely 100% on him. But the fact of the matter is nothing has happened in 11 years, and it's time for a healthy divorce. Send Stafford to a new organization and start over if you're Detroit.
Hey, Jake, I really want to thank you for spending a couple of minutes with me talking Lions. It was a lot of fun, and we appreciate your insights and perspective. Have a great day, and thanks for being here, bud.
Thank you so much, Kevin. A lot of fun. We'll do it again anytime. I really enjoyed it.